Good morning, Honorable Session Chairman. Good morning, all the dignitaries on the dais and off the dais, and good morning, all the future chartered accountants of India. By wishing this good morning, I wish to introduce to a new dawn under GST, that is litigation. Now, why this is a new dawn under GST? Because GST was implemented with three main objectives. Apart from other objectives, certain important objectives were to simplify the indirect tax structures, for promoting ease of doing business, and for removing the cascading effect of taxes by providing seamless flow of input tax credit. But friends, let me tell you that over the past 4.5 years, what has been the experience of taxpayers, tax professionals, and even certain tax officers would agree that GST has not been able to achieve its objective as it was expected to achieve. But then you would ask me, Gopal, leave all this aside and tell me whether there is a litigation, whether litigation exists under GST, because we have heard that GST is a good and simple tax. So I would rather display you a slide and you decide whether GST is a simple tax or it is a litigated tax. For learning the GST, we need to read GST law, which includes GST Act, rules, notifications, and we need to also read circulars, though not part of the law, but we need to refer to circulars, hundreds of judgments, hundreds of advance rulings, hundreds of allied laws as well, and then we can conclude whether GST is a simple tax or not. So friends, I leave it to your wisdom to decide. But if we conclude that GST is a litigated tax, you would ask me, even if there is a litigation, what are the probable reasons of those litigation? So friends, there are basically three categorization that I have made. Enormous confusions. Of course, if we need to refer to so many resources to read a particular law, there will be confusion. Divergent views. Law cannot be interpreted in a single manner. Different people will have different view. As you can see, a person thinking that a figure is a 9, the other person is thinking it is a 6, and both are correct in their views. Litigation from department end. It is not that only taxpayers create litigation. Even litigation can arise from tax department's end. You would ask how? See, department has the power to revise its own order. So if the taxpayer gets the favorable order, the same can be reversed by the department. The department can also go for appeal in higher forums if the orders passed by subordinate authorities are, if the officer thinks that the orders are not correct, he can go for appeal in higher forums. So litigation can arise from department's end as well. Now you would certainly ask, कि चलो litigation है, but so is the proof. Where is the litigation? We don't see litigation. GST is a simple tax. You need to calculate supply, taxable value of supply, find the rate, and apply, calculate the tax amount. That's it. But then there is a litigation. I would show you some examples apart from many, amongst many. Taxability of liquidated damages, taxability in case of residential welfare association, interpretational issues in block credit related provisions, ITC disallowance because of fault of supplier. We would certainly discuss these in detail. Taxability of liquidated damages. See from the example, Mr. A has contracted with Mr. B to repair Mr. B's factory's machines within 10 days for rupees 10,000. Now, if Mr. A fails to provide fulfill the contract within the stipulated time of 10 days, Mr. B has legal right as per the contract to deduct 1,000 payable, to deduct 1,000 from the amount payable to Mr. A. Now the amount deducted by Mr. B, is it a supply by Mr. B to Mr. A? You would ask how? See, Schedule 2 of CGST Act includes an entry which says tolerance of an act is a supply of service. So Mr. B is tolerating the non-performance by Mr. A. Is it a supply of service by Mr. B to Mr. A, or is it a condition to the main supply by Mr. A to Mr. B? So that's a litigated point. Taxability in case of residential welfare association. See, in case of residential welfare associations or societies, what happens is that society procures goods or services from third person and provides to its members for consideration. Now, there is an exemption given under entry 77A of the exemption notification. If the residential welfare associations provide goods or services supplied to its member for consideration up to 7,500 per month per member, there is an exemption. But the confusion is whether the consideration amount of 7,500 is flat exempt or it is a condition to avail the exemption. For example, in this case, you can see the consideration charged is rupees 9,500. So whether when the condition of 7,500 is breached, whether only the differential amount of 2,000 is taxable or the entire 9,500 becomes taxable. Again, there are divergent views of different advanced ruling authorities. So this is also litigative. Talking about block credit provision, ITC is seamlessly allowed. Let me tell you, it is not seamlessly allowed because the provisions are interpreted by different authorities in different manner, and it creates confusion in litigation. I will talk about specifically about section 17(5) clause H. There, the law reads as ITC shall not be available in respect of the following. Clause H says goods lost, stolen, destroyed, written off, or disposed of by way of gift or free sample. So, how to interpret this in respect of the following? Let me ask you a question. When the inputs and input services are processed together and output is manufactured, the output goods is lost. ITC was taken on inputs and input services. Output goods is lost. So ITC shall be disallowed on outputs lost in relation to outputs lost or in respect of only the inputs. If the inputs are lost, only then ITC is disallowed. So if we refer to the judgment of Honorable Supreme Court, it's a very old indirect tax case law. So in the case of State of Madras versus Messrs Swastik Tobacco, so Supreme Court ruled that in respect of has to be interpreted strictly. In respect of means only the goods which the entry is talking about. So if the entry reads as in respect of, the ITC shall be blocked on inputs only. If the outputs are lost, inputs ITC on inputs shall not be blocked. But then again, there can be different views. Another issue that can be that can arise from the similar situation, whether the ITC shall be restricted on input services as well, because the clause that says on goods lost, stolen. But when we manufacture a product, inputs and input services both are used. So whether ITC shall be restricted on input services as well, again there can be different views. Another issue, when the goods are lost because of natural causes like flood, fire, etc., whether ITC shall be blocked. So if we refer to the again Gujarat High Court based judgment in the case of Imnani Distributors, so the Gujarat High Court ruled that applying the principle that no person can be compelled to do something which is impossible. So if a taxpayer is not able to control the natural causes, natural factors causing the loss of goods, he shall not be disallowed the ITC. But again, there can be different views. Now, this is one of the most important part of this discussion. ITC disallowance because of the fault of supplier. All of us who are doing articleship, if we are doing articleship in GST based form, we must have been doing GSTR 2A books reconciliation, and the people have confusion whether to take this from GSTR 2A or 2B for the purpose of reconciliation. Now, when section 16(2) clause double is notified with effect from 1st January 2022, ITC shall be allowed to the recipient only when the details of such ITC has been furnished and communicated by the supplier to the recipient. Section 16(2)(c), again it puts a condition on the recipient that to be eligible to claim ITC, the tax related to such invoice must be paid to the government either by cash or by utilization of eligible input tax credit. And similarly, there is the provision rule 86A, which allows the proper officer to block the ITC of the ITC ledger of the recipient if he has reasons to believe that there are certain specific grounds. One of few of those grounds are related to the supplier of the recipient. Now the dispute is, how can the law penalize the recipient because of the fault of the supplier? See, there is a settled principle of law that no person can be penalized for the wrongdoings of others. So how can the law, in GST law, the officers can penalize the genuine taxpayers because of the fault of their suppliers? Again, there can be disputes. Now, certain other litigative issues, I will just be highlighting those issues. ITC availability in case of book debt adjustments, when the creditor and debtor both owe money to each other. And instead of making payment in cash, they are settling their payments by way of book debt adjustment. Whether ITC shall be allowed. So departmental officers will definitely contend that no, as per Rule 37, payment has to be made within 180 days. But the question is, can payment not include payment by way of book debt settlement? In my view, certainly it includes. But then there can be dispute. ITC refund under inverted duty structure. In case of inverted duty structure, ITC refund formula restricts the maximum refund that is allowed only for the ITC related to the inputs and not input services. There is a very famous case law from Gujarat High Court, that is of VKC footsteps. Gujarat High Court allowed the refund of input services as well, but then Supreme Court reversed the order and said no, ITC refund on input services under inverted duty structure is not allowed. Similarly, it has been seen in recent cases that officers are not allowing the registration, not approving the registration for the business places which is a residential place. There is no provision in the law which says that no, you cannot take registration from residential place. And specifically in terms of in the times of COVID, when the people are doing business from home, why registration is not allowed from residential place of business, it is litigated. Last part, assessment proceedings. In the assessment proceeding, again, there are litigations. Why? The reasons, certain reasons. In some cases, it has been seen that officers are issuing show-cause notices without proper application of mind. Even though interest liability has been retrospectively amended to be calculated on net tax liability, but officers are issuing notices on interest on gross liability. This is absurd, but this is the reality. Lack of opportunity of being heard in many cases. Now, after the amendment in 17.5.12 being notified, when the explanation is inserted, whenever there is a mismatch in GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B, and if the tax amount is self-assessed in GSTR 1 but not paid in 3B, the officer can directly go for recovery proceedings under section 79, that too without giving opportunity of being heard to the taxpayers. So this is absurd because the principle of natural justice we have been learning from IPCC time audio alteram partem. No person shall be judged unheard. But then why law is allowing such things? This is litigated. Now the onus to prove that the case is a fraud case or bona fide misstatement, the onus lies on the assessee, on the taxpayer. So it becomes very tough for the taxpayer to prove that in certain cases. There are cases where officers are exercising unnecessary and harsh power. So that is again litigated. Officers are creating frivolous demand orders, because of which the assessee is left with no option but to go for higher appeal in higher forum. Even if the assessee opts to go for appeal in higher forum, he has to pay a certain amount as a pre-deposit money. But then recently, the case of dispute is that can pre-deposits be paid by cash, or can pre-deposits be paid by ITC, or is it mandatorily required to be paid in cash? So officers are contending, authorities are contending, though no, it has to be paid in cash only. But then there is no specific law, no specific provision in the law which says no, it has to be paid in cash only. The list is endless. We can discuss about this for an hour, but considering the time constraint, I would restrict my discussion till this point only. I would just conclude by saying this. See, the intention is not to go against the tax officer or to say that no, law is wrong. The law is drafted correctly, but we have to interpret the intention of the law. Both the taxpayers and the tax officers needs to be trained and educated in a manner that they interpret the law to extract what its intention mean and not what it says textually. If we go by the words of Earl Warren, it is the spirit and not the form of law that keeps justice alive. To promote ease of doing business, we must promote the intention of the law. Thank you guys. Thanks a lot, Team Vikasa.